Dr. Lani Jones, welcome back. I am like every conversation with you is a delight, even though I know I'm being analyzed, but that's just not true. I do feel like I need to put on my best behaviors because if you're just incredible expertise. But I'm also deeply grateful because I know you're helping me and our listeners every time. So thanks for carving out time for us today.
Absolutely. I love these conversations. I learn from them as well. So thank you.
Well, what I'd love to talk about today. So last time we spoke, we talked about the importance of planning and how to think about it and how to set yourself up mentally and strategically for it. I'd like today's episode to be hard-hitting, leveraging your expertise on how do we do it? And what, and by it, how do we make frameworks of success so that we can not just have good intentions, but we can have real platforms and systems of success that will sustain past the 21-day, motivation to go to the gym thing. But if it's okay with you, I would love to talk like hard-hitting, practical, applicable, get it done stuff. Does that work for you?
Absolutely. Let's do it. So in this ACT framework, you mentioned ACT. The first step is acknowledge your design. And now that's just kind of a fancy way of saying know thyself. And I know, Dusty, you and your groups and all the work you're doing, you're like, you got to know yourself to lead yourself and lead yourself first before you could lead others. And so that is that same principle, because one of the things I often see from all these ambitious leaders, these high achievers that we're both working with is there's almost this level of or expectation of themselves of, oh, if I'm really good enough, if I'm successful enough, that means I just do everything out of sheer willpower, or I am just so disciplined, like I don't need systems, which is why plans often fail because people don't build out the systems. And so part of that is understanding our humanness, understanding what is our survival instincts, what neural pathways have we already set down that are going to be working against creating these new systems and plans, things we're trying to accomplish. And so when we acknowledge, hey, I am a human, I'm wired certain ways, sheer willpower is only going to take me so far.
I get this conceptually and I love it. And you're right. We had so many people. I was having a conversation with just yesterday with someone. They're like, grit has taken them so far in life, but at some point, white knuckle hanging on is just not fun anymore. Where do you start, or how do you think about, like, if you and I are working together and you were to say, okay, Dusty, you need to acknowledge your design. I might look at you like with my eyes crossed and not really knowing what you mean. How would you help me understand that so I can begin to make better decisions and optimize for success?
So people don't have to get worried. We don't need a therapy couch for this. We don't have to like hold hands and sing kumbaya. And so the first step is just saying, okay, we're all humans. And so our survival instinct is to go with the path of least resistance. And so we know grit is very important. It's one of the biggest success factors there is. But if you are just constantly powering through, you are wasting so much energy because you haven't understood yourself. You haven't set up the systems to make your run even more efficient. And so from that alone of thinking, okay, if I actually dialed in on what speaks to me most, I'm going to be able to go even farther, even faster when I have those systems in place. And so in our humanness, we're always going to go naturally to the path of least resistance. And so on that just means when we're overwhelmed, we're stressed, when life has blown up, when we're in different environments, like it's hard to sustain. It takes even more willpower to stay with those plans, to keep doing the things we need to do to be successful. And so step one is just, okay, I acknowledge my humanness. I know I need systems in place. And then two is just doing a little bit of reflection of how do I work best? When do I work best? And, there's all kinds of great books out there, different theories in terms of timing, deep think, things like that. And so that's just the awareness of, okay, what type of situation, when I have control, when I have like full agency, can I put myself in to be successful? So it's not just the constant sheer willpower, and I'm literally just wasting energy trying to will myself through it.
Can you give me an example of like someone you work with or change the names, or just, an example of how it might show up where a person has done X before and realized that by acknowledging their design, their humanness, and who they are, what is going to optimize, the better choices, what types of behavior changes we're talking about here? Like, what is it that they're going to do differently because they've acknowledged, their own design, their unique design?
I have one entrepreneur I was working with, and we were finishing up a session, so just on the tail end. And she said, I'm really struggling with like my deep think time. I don't feel I'm very productive right now. It's just taking a lot of energy and more than it should. And so we just did a quick plan. And for her, she needed that dopamine hit going into that deep think time. And that is one of those things in humanness of we seek out those feel good endorphins. We seek out the dopamine, and that's not a bad thing, that our brains are wired to respond to that positive enforcement. One of the examples that comes to mind is Coach Nick Saban. He's been pretty vocal and open that he has 2 Little Debbie's oatmeal cream pies every morning with his coffee. I don't think anyone's going to critique him and been like, man, coach, if you had done away with those Little Debbie's and actually had a protein high breakfast instead, you would have had 3 more national championships. And so that's his dopamine hit. And he's like, yeah, if I don't start my day like that, it might not be a good day. And so sometimes these high achievers can get in that mindset of like, to be successful, to be disciplined means I have to like basically hate my day and be so structured and dialed in. And so knowing, okay, what is a cue for me? Is it a workout? Is that a good endorphin release? Is it an extra 15 minutes with your partner that just centers you for the day? Is it certain music? And so it doesn't have to be these big elaborate things, but thinking, okay, what is going to get me in the best mental space to go do the hard thing I have to do? And so with this entrepreneur, we really needed to work in a lot more physical movement to get a release, to get that leads to that mental clarity. We needed a dopamine release for her. And so we were kind of doing this on the like way out the door. And I circle back and follow up and I said, hey, how did that go? And she looks at me almost a little sheepishly. And she's like, I knew what I was supposed to do and I didn't do it. And I'm just like, okay, so I know you're extra stressed and overwhelmed right now. So you took the path of least resistance, which is understandable. And it was almost like this look of relief of, oh, I'm not just weird. I didn't fail. Like, I am human. I said, yeah, we had come up with a quick on the fly plan, but we had not created a system to help you succeed and help you build new habits. And so we took that plan, went the next step with us creating a system of habit stacking, accountability, and took it to that next level, because that's why so many of those New Year's resolutions in particular fail. People create plans, but they don't assess their roadblocks of what can happen, even the smallest thing that's going to prevent me from actually creating a system that makes this repeatable and sustainable.
That's cool. Well, I heard 2 things that really jumped out at me, and there's probably more, but one is the permission that it's okay to be yourself. All right. When you talk about Nick Saban and 2 Little Debbie oatmeal cream pies, or you talk about that concept of, hey, this is okay. Like I am wired the way I am. I'm uniquely created, and I don't have to follow the guru's system to the nth degree. And, if I follow this playbook or the recipe book, I'm guaranteed success. It's okay that I get rejuvenated by going for a walk or, by, doing whatever it is. So that was one thing that really popped out to me. And I think that permission, it seems like that's particularly important, especially when you are embarking on a system of change. And we're talking about this at the beginning of the year when people are making, resolutions. We talked about that last time. Neither one of us believe in resolutions, but it's a natural and normal time of year for people to start new and fresh and think about it. But if you are giving yourself permission to be yourself, then like you are at the same time trying to change yourself, and you can't like change everything at once. And you just have to say, okay, I need to have a segment of me that's better than it was, but I recognize these other things are working for me, not against me. To your point, you got to be uncomfortable. You got to have some discipline there as well. But that really jumps out. The second thing that jumps out that I'm real curious about is, how do you identify the blind spots? How do you identify those things that you can't see? Like I know in my work with clients, and I'm sure in yours as well, when we talk with people, the reason people go and get a coach or a mentor or have these types of relationships is because they can't read the label from inside the jar. They just can't see what's going on. How do you help, or how could someone listening to this start to develop awareness of some blind spots that may be subconsciously or unconsciously holding them back?
I'd say first step, ask those around you, the trusted people. It might be a partner. Partners can shed so much light on your blind spots, things that you aren't even aware of. If there's a trusted colleague, a boss, a peer, a mentor at work, ask that as well. If you're not getting consistent feedback, or, ask for that, how can I improve? The second way is to look back critically on your actions over the last year. What were your goals when you started 25? Did you succeed in all of them? Was it through willpower? Did you create systems? Because those, what we list as failures, mistakes, shortcomings, missed marks, can give us a lot of rich information. So why did you miss the mark? What happened that it was the day after perfect, you were going okay, and then something changed? And so go back critically and looking at, okay, when I did miss the mark, what was there? What event happened? Can you think back to your mindset? Because that can give us a lot of evidence of, oh, can I pull out any themes? Was it just when I get really overstressed, I actually don't cope with my stress well in my personal life? I'm still going to show up in the office and the workplace, but I'm not managing the stress well, and I fall off the wagon and all these other at-home areas.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing you say this when you talk about these things is you're not saying this with the voice of condemnation. You're not.
Oh,
at
no.
least I don't hear it. Like you're
not at all.
You're graciously saying, almost clinically, an evaluation of facts, so that I can make a different and better diagnosis to improve the outcomes in another cycle or sequence. I mean, I know I'm always working on this, and my list of things to work on is quite long. So I got to keep getting better at it. But I'm not hearing any indictment. It's much more clinical. It's much more understanding. What would you tell somebody as they get some feedback from someone they trust, and they look back and they it's some things that they didn't achieve or the things that could have gone better? What would you say to prevent somebody from getting overwhelmed? How do you start to take maybe all this stuff and then begin to create clarity from it? Like, what is it? Like, you get this big basket of here's all the things I didn't do or things that didn't go the way I wanted. And here's all the blind spots that, those that I love and love me are telling me I have. Holy crap, I got a lot of stuff here. How do I create clarity? How do I start?
And to your earlier point, I don't think I've ever been around a high achiever who is too soft on themselves. Like, I don't think for anyone in the sphere, entrepreneurs, execs, like that is not an issue we have to be aware of. And so, yes, that piece of understanding and grace, usually that's always what we need a little more of. And so just understanding yourself and your humanness and dopamine and endorphins and what your brain needs, like that's okay to do that.
Yeah. So it's interesting and like slight rabbit hole, but like with your background and experience and training and expertise, like you're looking at the whole system here. It is the brain. It is the dopamine. It's not just feelings. It's not just emotional. But it's the whole package that's really being affected and is an ecosystem. And so what we're trying to change is some outward manifestation, some goal we're trying to manipulate into an external environment. But what I'm really picking up from this and what I'm hearing is, like, you're talking about acknowledging our internal wiring, both biological and emotional, social, like all the thinking stuff too, so that we can optimize our decisions for the next sequence, the next cycle, and make some of these outcomes we want really stick. But it's a whole system process, not just I can do harder, I can do more.
Absolutely, because your physical health impacts your mental health. Your mental health impacts your physical health. And so with the clients I work with, we are really looking at all of those areas, because even if one area is really off, if your thoughts are really off, if your sleep is really off, if your physical health is an extra challenge in this season, like it's going to impact everything. And we have all the science, the research to show us those links, and even things like gut health and, oh, how does that impact things like depression? And so it's a very holistic. And so that's not just being frou-frou-y, that's being, oh, the science of how do my brain and body work together? And if I want to show up as best as I can in the workplace, in my life, then I at least got to acknowledge all of these different pieces. And so back to your question of, oh, wow, we have a lot of pieces to figure out. It can be very overwhelming. I would say just make a list, do a dump, but then start prioritizing. Okay, what is the low-hanging fruit? And so it's some of the snowball effect of, okay, can I choose one or two things? That's another thing with these New Year's resolutions is people will plan out like their perfect ideal life, which there's a place for that to envision where you ultimately want to go, but then they try and change everything at once. And so I'll slow the roll. I will say, no, like, let's get some low-hanging fruit. Let's get you some successes. And then we're just going to keep building and building. And especially if there's some really major changes that need to happen, I'd say, okay, go do this one thing for 30 days. Then we'll come back. And if you've got that down, we'll continue refining, tweaking it, and then we'll add the next piece. And so don't try and do everything at once, because usually that comes out of that place of just willpower and you're just trying to grit your way through it, but it doesn't lead to that long-term success.
Well, so that's really cool, because you're talking about optimizing for long-term success and the importance of getting some early wins on the flywheel that build the momentum. And I know that I've been guilty of that in the past, is I will do big dreams, big plans, big goals, and try to decode it into very small structured things. And sometimes they work, but it's really narrowing down. I know in my work with leaders, I'm always talking to like, get 3. If you got more than 3 things, you can't focus on anything. Like, 5 is like, get to 3. Can you get a most important thing? But I like in hearing you talk about this, the ability to get some of those low-hanging fruit. Like, I actually, when I first heard that, I was like, well, I don't want to do low-hanging fruit objectives. I don't want to do little things. I want to do big things. But that's not what you're saying.
It's all about figuring out, okay, we got to do the short term, but we're also thinking in that long term. I know you've heard me say this multiple times, but the extraordinary abides in the ordinary. So we got to do the little things too. Those are the little 1% that are ultimately going to create those really big changes. And so it's figuring out, okay, in this season, with where you are, with what's going on personally and professionally for you, how do we get you some wins? But our eye is always on the long-term prize too as well. So it's holding that tension of both things simultaneously.
I don't want to do small things, but it's the small things that lead to the big. I love your quote. And I always think about it through a sports metaphor of, if you want to win football games, you get focused on the fundamentals. It's the footwork, right? And when things aren't going well, you go back to the fundamentals. Like when things aren't going good, you always destruct all the complicated things and go, okay, what's the one thing I can do and do well, and then rebuild on top of that. It's a good reminder, especially as I'm in a preparation season, I'm making grand, big things. Like, no, these are some things I need to do that build the flywheel, that create this momentum. Let me ask you something. Are you leading off of instinct? I mean, you've got the vision, you've built the thing, but most leaders I talk to are still flying without a system. Vision to Victory, the mastermind, changes that. It's a 12-week experience where we install the leadership operating system you've always needed: purpose, strategy, cadence, metrics, execution. This isn't a course. It's not more content. It's a small group of leaders who are done chasing clarity and ready to lead with it. You'll walk out with a full leadership operating system, a trusted circle of peers, and a repeatable way to scale without losing yourself along the way. There are only 12 seats in this group, and most are already spoken for. It's an application-only process. Go to arcusgroup.com/mastermind to apply. When you think about good goals and setting good goals, how do you move it, or how do you think about helping people move past good intentions and into good, achievable frameworks that will actually create the outcome we work, right? Sometimes the joy is the work, right? Sometimes the transformation is actually the best part. We don't often see it in the moment, but later on you go, you know what, I actually enjoyed all those days running or all those days in the pool or whatever it was. But that's not often what we think about when we're getting started. We just have good intentions. We know where the road to hell is paved is with good intentions. How do we move these things from being aspirational, good intentions to put in place some structure? Like if somebody's listening to this, they can go, okay, here's 3 things I can do to take this from a good idea into something that's got a much higher likelihood of success. Assuming I've acknowledged who I am and what's going to work best, and how do I put the structure around it to make it work?
Most people can set their goals. Like that's not the problem area. There's like the SMART goals, that acronym. Are they specific and measurable and achievable, time limited, all of that, or whatever method they're using? But we need those plans still. So then we just have to level them up. We have to move them over into the systems, because a plan, it's very linear. There's a start and end date. Oftentimes that's our intention. It's often driven by motivation. It's the what and the when. So it gives us where are we going. It gives us a direction. Whereas a system levels that up. So it's all about execution. How do I create an environment? How do I take what's within my control and basically make it so I can't fail? So is it the dopamine hit? Is it accountability? Is it even cues? I love Atomic Habits by James Clear. Super popular book, but a very research-backed book of just even cues in our environment. Is a cue in our environment setting us up for success or setting us up for failure? Even something as simple as you're trying to get a new morning routine in place or a workout. What is the first thing you're doing when you get out of bed? Like those 30 seconds between, sleep and waking can really define your day, because are you inputting information that's helpful? What is the first thing you see? Even something as simple as, putting out your gym clothes, or if you're going to read first thing or journal or get outside, get some sunshine, how are you instantly setting yourself up as the path of least resistance? Because if you get up and you're like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym, but oh man, I didn't do laundry last night, and so I really don't have the workout clothes I want. And they seem like, once again, these really little things that I should grit or power my way through, but ultimately aren't going to be a sustainable system. And so that's kind of step one of what can I control in my environment that is just going to make things repeatable for me.
I love that. And it's the understanding what's within my circle of control. Like, what is the one small thing I can put my shoes up? I can go do this thing the night before. I've read stories about people saying, I can sleep in my running clothes if I have to, like whatever it is that removes that barrier. How do you recommend people treat the system? Is it a perfect and infallible system, or is it one that they need to be able to reboot from time to time and get it, control alt delete in case it's not working? What comes to mind is I work with leaders and think about it for myself. Oftentimes designing a system, it means that the first day I don't follow the system perfectly, then you drift. And I think that's what we see with people who over-engineer, these very complex or overly grand objectives or goals for the coming year. Like the first day you miss, you go, oh, I don't feel good. And then you sleep in, then you sleep in, then you sleep in. Next thing you know, your system's broken. How do you think about that? What is it that people should expect or strive for in the pursuit of activating a system?
We have high levels of success. We have high levels of standards for ourselves, but we throw perfection out the window because that is when, if you are only striving after perfection, the first day after you aren't perfect, usually that's when things come crumbling down because you're like, what's the point? I couldn't do it. It wasn't sustainable. But yet, if we really work on that mindset of how are we approaching this of, okay, we've done everything to set up systems, accountability, cues in our environment, everything we have agency and control over. But you know that someday life is going to blow up. You're going to get the unexpected. I think that's one of the first early learning lessons of adulthood, of just when you think you have it figured out and you're like, I can do this adulting thing. Wow, life is going to be like, here, hold my drink. I'm going to show you what's up. And so if we take the mental mindset of there's going to be unexpected in life, I'm going to have an off day, then we become way more flexible and we build up way more consistency over time, and we can get back to it. Because instead of fearing the unexpected, instead of fearing that day of failure, once again, we see it as, okay, this happened. Now, what do I have control over, and how do I get back to my path? And so it's really that mindset shift from perfection to consistency that people recover that much quicker if they do miss a day or something gets off.
It's probably my favorite part of the James Clear Atomic Habits app is the little nudge you get, never miss twice, right? So
Yes,
you build a mentality or a mindset around, all right, I missed yesterday, but I don't miss twice, right? We don't do that. As we've walked through this, we're talking about, we've acknowledged our design, our unique design benefit. Where do we have benefit? Where do we have things we have to watch out for? We've talked about creating clarity, prioritizing, attacking, chunking down even to some things that are low-hanging fruit, easier wins. What is it that we need to do, or how would you start getting someone to go pen to paper and build a system, designing a process that doesn't feel unduly burdensome, and is still very actionable, but is structured in framework where it's repeatable, not perfect, but it is repeatable. How do you think about that? What is it someone listening could start doing, based on hearing you talk about it?
I would say choose one time of your day, because usually there is a time of your day that you're most susceptible to not being on things. You're like, man, I'm just not maximizing my time here. I'm not being intentional. For some, it's the morning. For some, it's the evening hours, the few hours leading up to bedtime. For others, it's the deep work in the middle of the workday. And so choose the time that you're like, man, if I really got this piece figured out, these 3 hours of the day dialed in, things could look totally different a year from now. So pick that biggest problem area and then say, okay, what systems do I need to put in place? Leading into that time, how do I set myself up for success? Do I get the endorphin hit, the dopamine hit? Is there accountability? For some, even on the wake up, it's they're automatically texting accountability buddy of, hey, I'm getting to the gym, or I'm making space for some of the mental work I need to do to clear out the clutter right now. Or in the evening times, is there accountability of, okay, I've had a long, stressful day. I just want to, binge watch shows, but really that's not helping me mentally, physically, long term. And so how do I rethink that time? So choose one block of the day and figure out, how do I create structures within that to help me better maximize that time, to be intentional.
You're not saying it has to be the morning. You're not saying you have to do it before you go to bed, but it's choose the time of day, time of day, every day, that's structured, that you can do this reflection, this intentional, purpose-driven work to achieve your ultimate goal. But again, it came from self-awareness, and it came from, clarity of what's most important. What is a system or process that you follow relentlessly because it works, and it gives you the results you want? And also, isn't one that you maybe like it now, but when you started it, it wasn't easy, or it's not something you enjoyed?
Probably figuring out for me, it was the transition from how do I go out of my quiet time or my workouts in the morning into my work time? Like, how do I then get in the best mental space for that? And so there was a lot of trial and error because there's a lot of great like planners out there and do these 5 things every day. And this is gratitude. I am not one where I like someone else say, do all these fill in the blank things. That's just not my cup of tea. But I got just a blank notebook. And now when I'm transitioning then from like, we'll just say personal to professional time, I have like a 15-minute window every single morning. And the first thing I do is I write on that page, like I do the date, and it could be a scripture from my quiet time. It could be just a mental block I'm having. It could be even a bad attitude or something I'm ungrateful for or frustrated about. And I kind of write a declarative, like, what is truth? What is the best space? And just those few lines there set the tone for where I am mentally for the day. And then under that, I have my top 3 to 5 have to do items for the day, depending on, what the schedule of the day is, how many meetings there are. And then underneath that will be some of like maybe personal things or things that aren't directly work related. And then I have a couple other sections within it, but just taking that 15 minutes to set up that mental clarity, to get in a good frame set, that helps me maximize all then the work I did do first thing in my morning routine, but then sets me up for success. Because for me, just that little mental trigger of not rushing into a work day, but being so intentional about where am I in my headspace? How am I showing up for my clients? Even how am I showing up for my deep work time? What mental junk do I need to clear out has really been a big piece for me.
So many folks, myself included, you look for the silver bullet. If I just follow this system, this influencer, that Gary Vee says this is the best, or Tim Ferriss says this is the best. And so we can pursue silver bullets thinking we're going to have some magic elixir for their success, as opposed to understanding what works for us and for our success. And, I'm an experimenter, so I try all the systems and things. And then, and then I'll get back to it and go, wait a minute, why am I doing this? Because all I've done is add more and more and more to my plate. I haven't pruned out. And so, you can create this doom loop of, energy transfer because you're trying to do too many things, or you're not really focused on the right system. One of the systems I use, and it's interesting, I've been talking to a lot of people about it this week, is I have a very simple practice of once a quarter creating my ideal week calendar. And it's an ideal week where I block out, hey, this is in a perfect week, an ideal week, this is how I would spend my time. And I hit it 70 to 80% of the time. Most weeks do not go because the weeks are full contact sports, and, if a client needs something or something comes up, and it hijacks things. But at least I have a plan, and I have 70% plan. And it's not just my work, it's my entire life, ecosystem of life, because I want to be intentional about it. And, I will audit against that and go, okay, realistically, how good am I doing against this? And in our first conversation, you said a line, and I had to look it up because it really made me stop and think. It's like, you show me your calendar and I'll show you your priorities. And you said something to that effect.
Yeah.
And it's so important to do. And like what you're talking about right now, the system of daily work, like show me your daily process, show me your daily system, and I'll show you your impact and your effectiveness. And it is so incredibly true. And while there are a lot of planners out there and a lot of books, I'm always amazed at how many people are reacting, like living life in a reactive state versus an intentional state. And I think that's what I'm picking up from and hearing when you talk about this entire process, but specifically around system, is this move from an intentional move from reactivity into proactivity, and to design with intent, not perfect, but design with a place you want to be, and then optimizing based on knowing yourself, based on having done the priorities, and based on having given yourself the right structure to give yourself a shot at making that goal that you want become a reality. As we're getting ready to wrap this up, what 3 pieces of advice would you want to give someone so when they hear this, they immediately go get the journal or, do the thing? What 3 things that are actionable and meaningful questions they can think on, whatever it is, would you want someone to do after listening to our conversation today?
Piggybacking on our first conversation on this is creating the time and space. Like, actually give it the space it deserves. You've written down a few goals. Great. Now go the next step, create a system for it. Number 2 would be don't go at it alone. Find your accountability, whatever that looks like, something as simple as texting a friend, telling a partner your goal, a mentor, coach, whoever it is, don't go at it alone. And then number 3 would be continually refining it, circling back, checking that mindset of perfection. I love how you said with your calendar, you do it, I think, quarterly. And so you aren't seeking perfection on that. You're like 70, 80%. Hey, that is winning. I always talk in seasons with my clients too, because maybe the morning routine you have is what you need in the season. And then maybe it is no longer serving you a year from now. And so base on whatever life throws at you, or, you take a detour at work that was kind of unexpected. You need to continually, on some level, be reassessing, okay, is my plan still serving me? Is this still what I need in this season? Are these still the correct priorities? Because we can't get so hyper-focused on just the success isn't completing the plan. The success is in what all those little things are going to build up to, that long-term picture. And so it's that reevaluation process of look at it. Is it working? Reevaluate, repeat, refine, review.
I love that, especially the repeat, refine, review. Like it's a loop, it's a cycle, and that's a system, right? That is by its very nature, a system of work. Lani, this is always insightful for me, and I always get so much from our conversations and nuggets, and I'm filing away for later. We're going to put all your contact notes and information in the show notes. And if it's okay, we'll share this ACT framework download for our audience members, because it's really good to help you think about how you're optimizing a system of success for 2026 and beyond. Any parting words of wisdom that you'd want to make sure folks are thinking about in this, this fun time of year where we're all dreaming about what could actually be a little bit better next year?
So many people get paralyzed and they don't have the big plan. They don't have the perfect plan. And so they just don't start anything. And so really it is that simple and that complex of just take the next step. Just do stepping. Don't get stuck in that loop of inactivity.
Lani, this has been amazing, as it always is. Thank you so much for your time, effort, and energy. And I know that myself and many others will be positively impacted because we've got a better system to make sure that we are optimizing our lives for ourselves, our unique and special selves. So thank you so very much.
Thanks for the conversation.
Hey, before you go, if this episode helped you see leadership differently, I have 3 personal requests. First, and this is the most important one, share this with one leader who needs it. Think of someone in your network who's frustrated with their team's execution or is trying to scale their own impact. Copy this episode link right now and text them, hey, I just listened to this episode and I think you'll get real value from it. That simple act of sharing, that is servant leadership in action. Second, subscribe to Leadership Unlocked. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcast player, just hit subscribe or the follow button. That way you won't miss the next episode, and it helps us reach more leaders like you. And third, if you're willing, this would be a huge help for us. Leave a 5-star rating and write a quick review. I know it takes 60 seconds of your time, but here's what it does. It helps other leaders discover the show. Every rating, every review, it's how we expand our impact together. So those 3 things, share with a friend, subscribe, leave a review. I'm deeply appreciative, and that would give us so much help. Thanks for being part of the Leadership Unlocked community. Now go create some clarity for others.